Events happen that change our lives. Dealing with change is what we do. We discuss with industry professionals objective solutions to work through cherished items and family memories. When we go beyond the gavel, we provide tools and information to deal with these crisis times. Hi, welcome back. I'm Shane Feely with Auction Solutions, and we're going beyond the gavel today to talk with Steve Schmidt from Carlson Burnett. He's been here before talking a little bit about wills and probates and items that you need to know to prepare for your at the end of your life or things that might change in your life. Today, Steve's talking about legacy. And when I think of legacy, I think about how you've lived your life and how people think of you and maybe what you leave behind, tangible or intangible. Steve, are we kind of on the same track here?
We are, yeah. Legacy is something that's really important, I think, to a lot of us as we get older. A lot of times we don't think about legacy until we get a little bit older in age, and then we look back in our lives and we say, okay, this was important to me.
Sure.
I've done these things, or these are the things that kind of guided my life, and the principles and just the different things that I've learned over the years that have kind of helped me make some decisions. And how do I want people to remember me for the things I've done or how I've helped other people and those types of things.
Well, that's pretty neat. So are we talking about making a donation somewhere or building a foundation, or how far can we go with this?
Sure. And that could tie in. So a lot of times we do look at the financial side of things, but it's a lot more than just the financial. It's also on the stories and just the values and things we thought about and things we cared about during our lifetime. So whether it's involving a charity or our family or the community or just different things that we've been involved with during our lifetime, it's more than just the money. It's also, the principles and the things that have helped us make decisions and guided our lives.
Oh, that's great. So where should we start with what you'd like to present today? Because I know you've got a lot of information.
Sure. I kind of like to start just about kind of estate planning in general, how that looks like. So we talked a lot about the basic estate planning.
We did.
And basic estate planning is just getting a few documents in place and getting some things lined up. The next level of planning, we call it level 2 planning, is looking at more relational. So it's more long term, it's more, as I get a little bit older, I care about, okay, how are things going to look like for me and for my family as I become older, as I maybe have to make some decisions in where I'm going to live, maybe I can't live in my house, and all those types of decisions is kind of the next phase. And then the third phase is what we're going to talk about mostly today, and the third phase is, okay, how do I want to be remembered after I'm gone? How to be remembered as I get older for the things I've accomplished and the things that I've helped other people?
Sure. And of course, we've always talked about going to an attorney, but let's say I like a particular organization. Would I leave something to them? Do I tell them? Do I notify somebody that there might be a gift coming if I was going to make a financial donation?
It can be a good idea to do that. So Americans are very generous people. Surveys have showed that over 85% of us give something to charities on a regular basis.
Correct.
And it's not just motivated by, okay, I'm going to get a tax deduction or that type of thing. A lot of times it's motivated by trying to help other people. So we want to pick organizations that are really good organizations. They have a good mission that we agree with and they have good leadership. And yeah, then we may want to talk to that organization at some point. Maybe it's early on or maybe it's down the road a ways after we've been involved with that organization. So again, about 85% of us give money to charity. Well, that can be a lot of different charities. So maybe during my lifetime I've supported 20 or 30 or 50 charities or maybe more.
Yeah, sure.
So it could be a lot of charities, but as we get older, a lot of times we want to go down to, okay, if I pass away and I'm going to give something to charity, maybe what's the 1 or 2 charities, maybe 3, but 1 or 2 charities that I really care about, that I've really supported over a long period of time.
Sure.
Because that's really the charity that's important to me and what I'm trying to accomplish.
And so hopefully it will be something that you've been involved in a lot and that your family's aware of and you've talked about it a lot, so they won't be surprised.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So it's interesting. A lot of times when somebody's parents pass away, they find out, they go to the funeral, or they're looking through some documents and they find out some things that they didn't know about.
Oops.
So that happens quite a bit. Used to be many years ago, maybe 50, 100 years ago, people were really private. They didn't tell their kids. And a lot of times people would pass away rather suddenly. So it wasn't as important to maybe worry about, okay, what happens if I can't take care of myself, because people passed away rather suddenly. So people tend to be more private back then. They didn't really tell their kids. They didn't really tell their grandkids a lot of times what they were supporting.
Wow.
And so a lot of times the kids and the grandkids didn't find out about it until after mom and dad passed away.
Sure. I worked with a young man out of Colorado, and his mother was pretty well known in the Bellevue community, and she had left the items in the house, the personal property, to him, but had left the house to her favorite charity, which was, I believe, the Optimist Club. Is that kind of what we're talking about? He was not surprised, though. He kind of knew it was coming and was completely aware and easy to work with. But I can imagine if there's a little bit of a shocker in there. But it is something that we want to go with because our parents wanted that.
That's right. So yeah, we want to make sure that our parents' wishes get honored. But yeah, it's good for mom and dad to talk to their kids and their grandkids about that, because a lot of times that's a way for mom and dad to kind of pass some of those values on to their kids and grandkids. If there's a particular charity or particular value that they're trying to support and help other people, it's good for them to have those conversations.
Well, that's great. Some of the other ways who are talked about in the will, can you gift while you're still able to and think about it and just drop $1,000 or to your favorite organization? Sure.
So there's different ways to support charities, and for some people they want to get more involved at an earlier age. They may do that when they're younger, or maybe when they're retired and they have more free time on their hands, they want to get more involved with charities. So a lot of times that's important as we get older, to kind of have those personal connections, not just giving some money, but also get involved and maybe going to the charity on an occasional or regular basis, maybe going to visit the charity and visit some of the people that they've helped. So yeah, there's different ways to get involved with charities. There's different ways to help them financially too. And that's one of the great things about America here, is we really support giving money to charities. And so there's really some tax incentives to doing that. So for income taxes, there's less of an incentive today than there was a few years ago, because those laws have changed. But still, when people pass away, there's still some tremendous tax savings that can happen. And so a lot of times when we give maybe a significant amount to charity, we're not necessarily taking much or anything away from our kids.
I was talking with Monty Schatz about the same thing, and he mentioned that when you have abundant finances and funds and have had a great life and have been very successful, sometimes the amount of giving reduces on the back end what you might have to pay in an inheritance tax. Does that make sense?
That's true. That's true. So federal estate taxes, most people don't care about federal estate taxes. It's over $11 million per individual. Most people don't care.
Sure.
But we still have issues with Nebraska inheritance taxes and income taxes.
Oh, gotcha.
So there's certain assets that really are not a great asset to give to even my spouse or my kids, and those are like IRA type assets, 401k type assets. So a lot of times those retirement assets are going to be heavily taxed if they go to my spouse or my kids, and they're even more heavily taxed if it goes to somebody else, like nieces and nephews. Those can be really good assets to give to charity, because charities don't pay any of those taxes.
Oh, that's great.
So IRAs can have all taxes from every different direction. They can have the income taxes and Nebraska inheritance taxes, and so they can really be reduced in the amount going to the family.
Wow, that's a lot. I had no idea those could be so taxed, and that's the money that we worked so hard to put away pre-tax dollars. And wow, that's really interesting.
Right, we're trying to save those taxes for our retirement, and so they're good for our retirement, but not as good when we give them to our kids.
Man.
But there are some assets, and one in particular is life insurance, which is a really good asset to give to family members. And so particularly when I'm talking to somebody who has some family members that aren't as close, maybe nieces and nephews, or even maybe they're in a relationship where they're not married, life insurance is a really good asset to give to that individual, because that can go to that person without paying any types of taxes.
Okay. So if you didn't have a whole life policy before, can you get one now? And are they still as cost effective as they used to be?
They can be very cost effective. We don't actually sell life insurance. We work with a lot of advisors that do sell life insurance, so we encourage people to either talk to somebody they know already, or we can help them find somebody. But life insurance can be a really good tool, and you don't want to wait too long, because the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets.
Absolutely.
But if you can get those when you're younger, they can be a really good tool for when somebody passes away. But they can also be a really good tool as we get older and look at retirement, because we can actually use some of that money during our lifetime to take care of some different things as we get older, retire, and those types of things.
Oh, that's very interesting. That's interesting. What are some of the other ways that you can kind of save inheritance taxes and things like that, Steve?
So there's different kinds of tools. We like to just give direct gifts to charity, maybe in our will or from our IRA. Those are so the direct gift. But then there's also some little bit more sophisticated gifts. So we do a lot with trusts, and there's different kinds of charitable trusts. And these are sanctioned by the IRS. They're actually in the code. There's actually provisions for doing this. And so there's different kinds of charitable trusts. There's something called a charitable remainder trust, which is a really good tool if I've got an asset that's highly appreciated. So certain assets we look at typically is maybe somebody has a stock that's grown significantly over their lifetime, over a period of years. So maybe we have a pretty low cost basis. If we sell that, we've got to pay some income taxes, we've got to pay some capital gains taxes.
Correct.
But if we give it to charity or if we put it into a trust, we can avoid or reduce a lot of those taxes. So highly appreciated publicly traded stock. Another thing that we have to look at though is businesses. So a lot of times people have successful businesses that they've been working on for a long time.
Sure.
And if I'm looking at retirement, maybe I want to sell my business or transfer my business. Well, a good way to think about doing that is through a trust. Because again, if we put an asset like that into a trust early enough on in the process, we can end up saving a lot of taxes.
That's awesome, because I know you can put things in and out of the trust as long as you're able to do so, but at the time that you're passed away, then the trust, whatever's in the trust stays in the trust and the rules are there. How would that work for a business?
So typically when we put a business into a trust, what we're looking at is we're going to end up selling it in a fairly short time frame. So we can't have that arranged prior to going in there, but we can always already start the process of thinking about, okay, this is how we would think about selling the business. But you put it inside the trust, and now you're actually turning over the decisions to the trustee. So the trustee is a lot of times maybe a corporate trustee or a professional trustee, and they're actually the one involved in taking care of the business for long enough as it takes to actually find a buyer and sell it. So the business is going to get sold fairly soon after going into the trust typically.
Sure, that's awesome. What about real estate that you may have in the trust? Is that the same premise?
We can do the same with real estate. So here in Nebraska we work with a lot of farmers, and a lot of times farmers have a very low cost basis in their land, and sometimes the return on farms isn't as high as we'd like to see.
Yeah.
You know, we've got the cost of farming is up pretty high.
Terrible.
And for a while we had really good prices for some of the crops.
Sure.
And now some of those prices have come back down. So a lot of times farmers are thinking, I've got this asset and it looks like it's worth a lot of money on paper. I've got to pay some real estate taxes, but I'm not making a lot of money on it that I maybe could make some other place. And so yes, we can definitely put farmland into a charitable trust, and inside the charitable trust we can sell it, and then we can have a much better way of making some money for the farmer.
Oh, that's awesome. So what are some of the other ways that we can kind of protect our assets?
Well, we like to protect assets, and again, trusts are a good vehicle to do that. But we like to protect assets, making sure we have good documents in place, making sure we have the right decision makers in place. And so that's a big part of the whole process. Is maybe we trust our kids, maybe it's not our kids, maybe it's professional. But making sure that we have the right people in place, that's one of the most important decisions. So of course you have to want to talk to qualified professionals, attorneys, maybe CPAs, financial advisors, often involved in that process of getting the right people lined up.
Absolutely. And I know when people ask me the questions that I'm asking you and you're informing us on, I always say call an attorney, ask your CPA, ask somebody who does that for a living, because I'm just the tip of the iceberg, the little bit of information that I have. But it's always to redirect, because I think that the professional should be where they go to.
Yeah, you always want to work with good professionals and ones that have a fair amount of experience. So, you know, in our law firm, we have several attorneys that work in that area. We have some really seasoned attorneys, really younger attorneys. Well, it's good to work with seasoned attorneys to get that experience, but then you think, well, okay, is that attorney still going to be here after when I really need him? That's right.
That's right.
That's right. So it's good to kind of have that continuity. So the younger attorneys are still learning, but we know that they're going to be there a long time.
Absolutely. Well, so. and they also learn from the attorneys who've been around a while too. What about, I'm looking through your list here, what about the asset protection as far as lawsuits? How do you protect from that, or the assets from something like that?
Sure. Yeah, so there's different types of things we want to protect from, and lawsuits certainly can be one of those. So as people's estates get a little bit larger, maybe they've been successful in business or however, they want to make sure that, okay, maybe I'm a target now that people are going to want to sue me. So there's different ways to protect that. We want to make sure they have good insurance, and again, We don't do that directly, but make sure they have good property and casualty insurance. So good insurance, you can do a lot of with a good umbrella policy, those types of things. But then also we like to work on the document side too. Maybe it's setting up an LLC, setting up a trust. So different types of vehicles can really be good with asset protection, because now instead of being able to sue you directly, they've got to go through some steps to get there. And so we can really protect from crazy lawsuits, frivolous lawsuits.
I'm going to back up a little bit and look at, we talked about tax planning a little bit, but what planning versus the state when there are no rules for nothing's been planned?
Well, when nothing's been planned, then really we can have something that gets pretty difficult pretty quickly. And so we certainly see that on a fairly regular basis. Just talking with a couple now where one of them had to go into a facility, the other one's still at home.
Sure.
And they don't have any kids, but they've got family very much interested in helping them. Well, the husband went to the facility, and he's got a couple siblings that have one way of they think it should be done.
Sure.
And she's living at home, and she also has some family that wants to do it a different way. And so you really get into that conflict there between that. So all sorts of conflict, whether it's lawsuits, whether it's between family members. If you don't have things planned out, then that's going to happen. So we like to see people come to us well before they go into assisted living or the nursing home and say, okay, these are the ones going to make the decisions. Because if we have the right people making decisions, and we like to have the same people making decisions for both, even if they don't have, we want to make sure the same people are making decisions when possible.
Right.
They're going to look out, because otherwise, like in a situation like I'm describing, now we can have really strong differences of opinion and strong conflict over what's important and how to take care of things.
Sure, and how to take care of those people as well, so that they have, once they've gone into a facility or something, you want them to have the advantage that they've worked for, so that they can stay there as long as they can and be treated. I guess I always say live the life that they've always lived, so that they don't see major changes. As their needs change, they still can be in the best place available for them.
That's right. So as people get older, there are some ways the government will step in and give some assistance, but only if we do good planning. So we see sometimes people trying to just make it up as they go along. They want to give assets away to their kids, or they want to just make some bad financial decisions. And so when that happens, a lot of times they need somebody to come in and kind of straighten some of those things out, because the government's not just going to step in and help until they see that you've done a good job of taking care of things and made some good decisions. They don't want you to just do some crazy things. They want to make sure that you're trying to take care of yourself too first.
Right, and I have had some instances where the family may have sold something 3 or 4 years prior to the person needing additional care or their passing. And I've had to go back through my records and find out who bought, for example, an asset, what their name was and who we sold it to prove that it was actually sold the right way and that it had been, and that the family member didn't have it. I guess they're checking a little more on that?
They are. As we get older and more people are needing some type of assistance, they are checking more completely on that. So used to be they would look back for 3 years of records. Now they're looking back 5 years.
Oh.
So any type of gift or any type of thing that was maybe sold for less than what it should have been sold, they want to know about that. And they want to make sure it was actually a legitimate sale, or it was actually done the correct way.
Yeah. Not that dollar sale, right?
That's right.
They always ask you about it at the assessor's office, Well, let's talk about a little bit about family issues when you have a trust and you've got your legacy. If some of the family members haven't been involved in your, I'm pretty involved in a lot of events, and my kids come with me and they help and they're familiar with it. But what about people who have no idea what it's about? How do they handle that?
Well, you want to get them connected with the charity, and so I always encourage people, hey, if you're going to be leaving a significant amount after you're gone to charity, why don't you have a conversation now? Some people want to be more anonymous, but if they're open to that, it's a great idea. The charity always wants to meet them. The charity would much rather meet somebody who's going to give them $20,000 or $100,000 or $1 million than to not know about them until after they're gone. The charity wants to get to know them a little bit, get to know what's important to them so that they can carry out their wishes.
Sure. Well, in most charities, people get involved with benefits and charities because of their work that they're doing, and they're so passionate about it. But if the kids aren't, there might be a little grudgingness or...
There can be, yeah. The kids may not be too happy about it, but we don't see a lot of that. Usually the kids are on board with that.
Oh, that's great.
And we find out that a lot of times the kids don't necessarily say, hey, I need every nickel from my parents. I want to make sure that their wishes are respected and honored, and that their legacy is carried on. So a lot of times the kids are on board with it.
Oh, that's great. So what else can you tell us about it? I mean, you had to have some things happen here lately that you want to talk about to really make an impact with our audience.
Sure. Well, a situation I went through, I went to a college that didn't have much of a foundation, Grace University. A lot of people have probably heard of that here in Omaha.
Yes, we all have.
And so they didn't really have much of a foundation. They made some decisions to try and move a different direction. It cost a little bit of money, and so they did have some money set aside, but they went through that money fairly quickly. And because of that, they're no longer in existence today.
Sure.
So that's kind of the bad side of things, where if a charity doesn't build a foundation and doesn't talk to their donors about making the larger gifts, that can happen. And so really I'm passionate about helping any really good charity build that foundation. You know, if a charity's been around for 10, 15, 20 years, and they know how to keep the lights on, and they maybe have an executive director,
Sure.
a couple of employees, they're really good at that. At some point in time, they need to make that transition about, okay, how do we build a foundation, and how do we make sure that the mission and the vision is going to continue even after this particular director retires or is no longer there.
So you're even talking about the charity's legacy.
That's right.
Today.
That's right.
Yeah.
So a charity can be around for a long time if they do a good job of building a foundation.
Right.
And some charities have done that. A lot of charities haven't. We have many charities here in Omaha. I think over 3,000 charities in Omaha, and some of them are just, you know, they have a really good cause. They have a few good people behind them, but they haven't really taken the time to build that foundation or that legacy.
Sure. We were doing a car drive for a very well-loved car race person on the local level, and he actually went on to the international level. He was amazing. And I think it kind of dropped off the interest after a while, and they don't do the rallies and things like that because they just didn't maybe look at what they needed to continue. And
it can take a lot of work to put on events. I mean, you can have an event that seems like a lot of fun. Depends how many people show up. Depends how many they give. But the charity's always looking at, okay, is this a great event, or is this something that maybe sounds like it could be a good event but isn't really working out?
Sure.
And so the charity has to kind of look at that too. But yeah, the charity obviously wants to stay out in front of the general public because, you know, some of the larger donations aren't going to happen unless they get a lot of the smaller donations. So charities really appreciate the smaller donations almost as much as the larger donations.
Well, I think that's great. And I think that now, where would I go to investigate a charity? Just because I like them doesn't mean I know that much about them.
Sure. And there's different ways. You can go online. Public charities have to always put their information online, so there's different ways to look that up.
Nice.
You type in a particular charity. You can always go to a community foundation. So that's one, you know, Omaha has a great community foundation. There's one for the entire state of Nebraska.
Wow.
Nebraska has a community foundation. And so a lot of times the community foundation will have really good information on a lot of different charities too.
Oh, that's awesome. So I am pretty involved in the community, but not as involved as you are. If somebody wanted to join, did just walk up to an organization and just say, hi, I'm Steve, I want to help out? Or, you know, some people don't know how to even start to get involved in the community because it's so important. They're involved at their church maybe, but not maybe with the community.
Sure. Yeah, and that's certainly a way to do it, is just go to the charity and say, hey, what can I do to get involved? And they love volunteers, so they'll find somebody to find a way to get involved. But yeah, there's usually somebody involved in the charity, and as the charity gets a little bit larger, a lot of times they have somebody in charge of volunteers, somebody in charge of fundraising, and then as they get larger, they have somebody in front of building the foundation. So that's one of the last pieces. But yeah, if somebody wants to help a charity, charities are really thankful for those people, and they look forward to that.
Yeah, that's great. My dad, when he retired, he went to work for the Red Cross, and so he drove blood out to the hospital and bone and, you know, things that people needed for surgeries out to the hospitals. And he did that as long as he could, and he just loved that, meeting new people and being around them and just driving. I think that was really good for him, and thank goodness it was good for the Red Cross.
Absolutely, and I think that's an important point. As we get older and maybe we're done with our career, our business, I think getting involved in charity can be a really good way to stay active and to really meet new people and to help a cause that you care about.
I think that's great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're Beyond the Gavel with Steve Schmidt with Carlson Burnett. If you have any questions, give Steve a call. Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for coming again.
Thank you so much.